who is well, actually, Andrii, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in more detail than the last time we spoke. You have quite an extensive background, and the topic I want to discuss today for those of you who are watching the show is the future of Ukraine post-conflict, politically and economically. There will be, or post-war, sorry, conflict, I think makes it sound like something that post-war Ukraine. And I wanted to get your thoughts, Andrii, on that and a conversation for all of those who are living through this in Ukraine and those who are friends of Ukraine, and really just get your thoughts on what the future holds, because that's one of your titles, is a futurologist. So Andrii, let's dive in real quick to your background again and what you did before the war and what you do now.
Now I'm in Kiev because here we have big unity of some institutions in order to elaborate economic politics, policies, some anti-crisis events and instruments. So I'm in Kiev. In fact, I'm Doctor of Science in Economics. I'm professor and elaborator of National Economic Strategy for Ukraine. Also, I'm an owner and founder of biggest business community in Ukraine, board business community. So I'm ready to speak both on politic issues and economic issues.
All right. And Andrii, before the war started, well, it started years ago, but before Russia openly admitted that it was party to this war, what was your background before you got into these initiatives? Just what's your history in Ukraine since you studied, and what brought you to this point before you go into the future?
Actually, I'm an entrepreneur and professor. So it was up to, I think, 2004, when we have first Maidan, first revolution, Orange Revolution. That time we organized a small NGO in order to help Ukrainians to win this revolution. But then we had a lot of expectation that we'll have modernization of our country. But unfortunately, we had to get into another revolution later in 2014. But we were prepared. We prepared for this revolution since 2011. We had the Ukrainian Republican Club. We elaborated strategies, ideas for future Ukrainian vision. And then on Maidan, we started the new country initiative, where we made a vision, strategic vision for Ukraine. More than 3,000 experts worked on this project, and we had this vision. Even made this vision as a President Poroshenko strategy, high level of his strategy. But unfortunately, again, we faced several problems connected with corruption, with old-fashioned system. We call this system ex-USSR system, bureaucratic, oligarchic, not human-centric system. So unfortunately, our ideas were destroyed by Poroshenko and his team in 2015. And we waited up to 2019, where again we were invited as economic strategists in order to elaborate new strategy. But again, we met new challenge, coronavirus. So we started with the anti-crisis, anti-coronavirus strategy policies for the country. But we managed to develop and to introduce and finally to make the main strategy for Ukraine, national economic strategy. We started it to implement a year ago. Now we have to completely rebuild these ideas, because we have to restart Ukrainian economy, recover first of all, and then to think how to modernize this economy. Because for sure we will not to rebuild old-fashioned factories or Soviet technologies again in our infrastructure, in our industries. We would like to build a real modern country in every spheres, in any sphere, starting from agriculture and metal producing up to IT sector, digital sectors of economy, etc. So I'm
Andrii,
working as a co-coordinator of these processes between government authorities and expert society and business society.
Andrii, so you started this in 2004. Were you a student at the time, or you were already in business or teaching as an economist at that point?
I continue to be all this time, starting from 1995. I'm a professor, teacher in university and some business schools, and an entrepreneur. I have a big consulting company, some research agencies, design agency, and also we're digitalizing health sphere as the total sphere. And then I'm an investor in some innovative projects, some startups, etc. So I'm continuing to being entrepreneur even now, when unfortunately 80% of our time we have to spend on recovering of Ukrainian economy.
Okay, and you said something interesting there. I'd like to dive into. In 2004. Was that the first time that you started this group about modernization? Was that the first time you got into organizing the business community?
Yes, it was a small organization, small initiative connected with some issues. Economic issues. We decided to rebuild hospitality sector in Ukraine, then some other sectors like healthcare sector, then IT sector and other sectors. So we tried to start some small steps in order to prepare economy for the future big steps. But actually 2004 we were so romantic, we were so how to say
idealistic,
yeah, sure, and weak. The main problem was that we were weak. We had hopes that politicians can totally modernize country, but we found out in 2013 that every politicians in Ukraine are Soviet-style guys. They are trying to do, even when they try to do something good for Ukrainian economy or society, they still use their communist standards or patterns in their policies. They can't be open. That they do not think that they need small and medium enterprises in order to develop economy. They consider that it's okay with big business and the oligarchic business. It's a main part of our economy. And as an economist, I've shown them that in almost each European country, biggest part of economy is a small and medium enterprises. They generate more than 50 up to 60% of GDP of their countries. For Ukraine, this number is less than 20%. Ukraine, this next revolution in 2013-14 was actually revolution of small and medium enterprises. Unfortunately, we didn't finish this revolution because again, oligarch system and old-fashioned politicians got power in Ukraine.
And was there any progress between 2013 and 2015 when you, I guess, disengaged with the government? Was there any progress after the second revolution, or was it all disappointment?
A lot of disappointments. We started a lot of initiatives, and even we had some progress. For example, we made an initiative, first professional government of reforms. We made, I think, joint project for 140 institutions, 140 association institutions from civil society, prepare it, the proposition for President Poroshenko, how we can make a real professional government for Ukraine. We made a special votes between us. We elaborated some ideas, some strategies, some programs, and we presented these programs to Poroshenko and to Parliament. We proposed the Parliament to start real professional reforms in the country, and we proposed them to use these professionals as a government, coalition government, but technical government, professional technical government. Unfortunately, we agreed with Parliament that time that it's okay if they take some ministers proposed by us, but into their government. As a result, we had completely vulgarized the idea. Our idea was destroyed because every politics, every ideas realized by this government was again Soviet style. We unfortunately we do not have modern courts in Ukraine. The same with legal system, with taxation system, with labor laws, with a lot of rules for regulations. So unfortunately we were not successful in that period. We lost almost everything. Every reforms was destroyed. Only Prozoro, public procurement, and some other reforms like some anti-corruption reforms, we realize it as effective, but not total modernization of our country. Unfortunately, it was not enough.
And what about 2019? There was a huge election wave where President Zelensky won 73% of the vote. He also managed to get, I think for the first time in Ukrainian history, his own party, brand new party, Servant of the People, as a majority. And that's when you came back into the government advising role, I guess. What were your hopes and what got accomplished then? Obviously, with the pandemic, you mentioned that affected the impact, but what was accomplished between 2019 and now based on you and your group's efforts?
A lot of breakthroughs since 2019. The main result is a land reform. We're back to the real private ownership for the land, which is very important for Ukraine. Then we had some reforms in regulation system, some reforms in taxation system, but again, not enough. Unfortunately, Zelensky is not oriented on economy. He still thinks that the main issue is safety of country, and he is very social-oriented president. For Ukraine, for Ukrainian modernization, we need to think first of all how to develop our economy, how to build this economy around of human capital, but first of all to consider entrepreneur and innovator as main person in the country in order to enlarge our economy, in order to dramatically grow economic potential of Ukraine. And then using this potential, we can enlarge social standards. But unfortunately, Ukrainian politicians, first of all, think about their ratings, not about perspectives, not about strategies. Therefore, they prefer to realize some social initiatives which are not effective for economy, vice versa, which are very bad for economy. But the very good moment was that President Zelensky can hear experts, ideas, some new ideas, some breakthrough ideas. He's a very open guy. So we had hopes that maybe not in first year of his presidentialship, but maybe later we will have a chance to prove him that better to be oriented in economy. And then we got this chance on the very beginning of 2020. But unfortunately, you know, whole world rethought their strategy in order to meet new challenge, in order to be effective in COVID times. But even at that times, President Zelensky agreed that it's very important to have strong strategy, strategic oriented economy. So we made a very good team of 40 institutions, analytical centers, more than 500 experts worked in order to elaborate this national economic strategy. Business association, government, presidential office, parliament, everybody who is responsible for economy and country joined this strategy development. Center for Economic Strategy was a coordinator. I and some other guys were co-founders of this center. Kirill Krivolap, Anatoly Amelin, and other experts. We made a platform where different institutions had a chance to add their ideas or some analytic views or something like that, and we jointly elaborated key decisions for government. Then government adopt these ideas to the state policies, and finally we had national economic strategy.
And when was that developed?
A year ago. It was presented and made a kind of law made by Cabinet of Ministers on March 17th.
Of 2021.
Yeah, 2021. Yeah.
So that was a big moment then, from your perspective, on the economic policy of Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah. We started a lot of digitalization processes. We thought about Ukrainian logistics, including Ukraine inter global value chains. So we developed a lot of idea how to implement this strategy, how to invite investors to Ukraine. For sure, we had one obstacle: court reform. We still do not have rule of law in the country. It was a big, really big problem for us, but we made a coalition in order to make this reform done. And we had hopes, but now I feel that after this war, after the winning war for Ukraine, we'll have completely another nation with completely another ideas, values, and rule of laws. Now we can see that corruption is not work on different levels. We are fighting not only against Putin but also against corruption.
Yeah. Well, that takes us into our main topic here, which is the political and economic future of Ukraine. And thank you for that short history of economic reforms since 2004. And I know that I've seen a little bit of that in terms of, as a tech entrepreneur in Ukraine, the thing that I watched closely was Dia City, and the digitization of Ukraine is far ahead of America in terms of passports and official documents. Almost all Ukrainians now can get online through an app, which I think is very important. Talk a little bit more about Dia City and what exactly that is, because I know there's the individual record keeping for all citizens, and then there's also the digital.
It's two different projects and even brands. We have Dia and Dia City. Dia,
I already messed that up. So talk about both.
Yeah, Dia is an application and system which for the countries for state services digitalization. Our Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhail Fedorov, is very smart guy, young and very progressive. He made outstanding team, and he found out how to collaborate with business. Of course, there are some problems because business as usual have partially different interests to a state. But anyways, he found a way how to cooperate with business. As a result, Dia is a service state, service electronic state for Ukraine. Dia City is another idea. Is idea how to make a certain territory, virtual territory in the country, with another laws, with liberal taxes, with good courts like a British courts. And the idea is to make this territory virtual territory for IT or high-tech businesses. You can become your company, can be a resident of Dia City, means that you have another legislation, another taxes, and then another possibilities. For now, I think more than 200 companies registered in Dia City, and we hope that in the future, not only IT, but other companies also will have a chance to join this idea, and maybe whole country become a Dia City country. Now we have for the war period, but I think that some of these ideas, some of these laws will bear permanent laws for country. We have very liberal taxation system, custom, logistics for import and exports, etc. So now we have a lot of interesting solutions made by parliament and president and government for making business more effective in such horrible days.
Yeah, let's talk about that now, because we are in a wartime economy, and we talked about that in the last episode. When we spoke, everything had shut down, and you and Vasile from Horizon Capital were on there talking about that. It seems that the economy is now adjusting. Restaurants are opening somewhat in certain locations. I know in Kyiv, there's manufacturing is happening. So describe right now what's going on in the economy and what decisions has the government made in reaction to the war, and what impact do you see that having?
First of all, I have to say that really it's a huge challenge for Ukrainian economy. We are making almost each week an analysis of Ukrainian enterprises, what's going on with them, what are their plans. Now we see that more than 75% of Ukrainian enterprises stopped their business activity completely, or more than 80% their activity stopped. This is a huge challenge for sure. Only 25% of Ukrainian enterprises found a way how to relocate their manufacturing or their staff and to rebuild their activity on other territories. More than $80 billion losses of Ukrainian small and medium enterprises up to now during these months.
Is that in revenue, or is that in
no, direct costs? Direct
so
losses.
capital destroyed, or capital equipment, or
equipment, their storages, their materials, etc. Or even goods on warehouses which are on occupied territory, something like this. Then Ukrainian economy, Ukrainian infrastructure, for example, lost more than $150 billion during these 4 weeks, months. Ukrainian GDP this year will be 35 to 45% less than in 2021. Again, it's a huge numbers. And even if we will calculate Ukrainian losses starting from 2014 up to now, and expected losses, it could be more than $1 trillion, thousands of billion dollars. It's a huge amount. It's much more than that assets which are frozen by G7 or European Union. I mean, Russian resources, Russian central bank resources, or Russian oligarchs' resources. It is not more than $400 billion, and Ukrainian losses is $1 trillion. So we will need international support in the recovery of Ukrainian economy and infrastructure, but even not only in recovery, but also in modernization of this infrastructure, Ukrainian and business. Back to business. Last week was a week of activization of Ukrainian business, relocating, starting new business models, developing new value chains inside of country, finding new ways how to export, because we lost Black Sea for Ukrainian logistics, which was the main direction of logistics by Ukrainian metals and agriculture production, etc. So now we have to find railway ways for logistics, etc. But we are working on it. We have big enough help made by European Union in this sphere, but not enough yet. Not enough yet made by Parliament in order to help business to relaunch their activity. For example, Parliament and Cabinet of Ministers introduced credits for business with zero interest rate for war period. But it doesn't work yet.
What is that credit? Is that lines of credit or loans, or?
It's a kind of loans. We have very nice program named by 579 interest rate for different spheres and amounts of money. For 5% of interest rate, it's very good for Ukraine, because traditional banking interest rates in hryvnia is approximately 20%. So state introduced this program in order to reactivate business in Ukraine, and now they have 0%. Now business have absolutely new taxation system. We are paying, we can pay, instead of VAT and other taxes, only 2% of turnover as a tax for the state. Also, we have free custom, means no tariffs, means no VAT tax. As a result, in nearest days, nearest weeks, we will have reactivating Ukrainian business, but still we have some problems connected with logistics. Not enough the cars, not enough refrigerators and other facilities. Also, we don't have enough territories on the west of Ukraine in order to rebuild or relocate some manufacturing lines and some food producers, etc., etc. Light industry, chemistry, and some other industries. So state should help such businesses to relocate, and they're working on it for sure. We have now very good collaboration between Prime Minister, Minister of Economy, Ukrainian West, Export Promotion Office, and other institutions developed during last years, which are working on elaborating policies, state policies. In addition, we have very good relations and understanding from Verkhovna Rada, from Parliament, and head of Economic Committee, Dmytro Natalucha, who are the biggest supporter of Ukrainian industrialization and the renovation and businesses. Unfortunately, there are some obstacles, or again, from Verkhovna Rada, from socialists in Verkhovna Rada, who I cannot even say protect Ukrainian economy from collapse, vice versa. By their decisions, stupid time to time, Ukrainian economy cannot make real breakthrough, real development. As a result, we have 50-50 solutions, not real progressive solutions for restarting of Ukrainian economy. For example, this situation in the real practice of taxes, in the real practices in some regulations, etc. But we are working. And
so that there's been, I guess, real economic liberalization that makes Ukraine one of the most attractive places to do business on earth, with, I think, 2% taxes, and it's totally voluntary. What talk about and it's really amazing the reforms that have come through. How does that, for you as an economist, how do you view it?
Actually, it's more populistic idea than a real idea for Ukrainian economy. It's not enough for Ukrainian budget. It's not suitable for the Ukrainian value-added chains. There are some restrictions up to now in this system, because, for example, the system can be used by small enterprises, but can be used by big enterprises. And as a result, for example, chains of supermarkets cannot use this system. they still should use VAT system. And if their suppliers doesn't use VAT, this means that supermarkets should pay 20% tax from sales tax. Compared to United States, this means more than 2 times higher taxes than in the United States. So it's only first step. We need to rethink the system. We are trying to elaborate with Ministry of Economy another approach which could be more progressive. For example, the biggest idea for Ukraine now is to change taxation system from Europe-oriented with VAT to innovative countries oriented. For example, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, first of all, and for sure United States do not have VAT. They use sales tax and corporate taxes and the taxes on labor paid by employees. This is a much better idea, and we are developing such approach for Ukraine. I hope nearest weeks we will completely rethink this taxation system.
And are you involved in that?
You're absolutely right that our idea, and even in National Economic Strategy, we made as a very important point. Ukraine should be the most attractive territory, country for innovators, investors, and entrepreneurs, and talents for sure. We should make a lot of decisions on it. In safety, in hospitality, but of course in human rights and in the taxation system.
And you as an economist, are you advising the government on these reforms right now? Are they, okay. So it's really exciting times that you see probably 30 years of reforms could happen in 30 days. Things that you've been asking for, hoping for 20 years of your career or more, you see a real opportunity for those to happen finally.
I hope.
Yeah. And what do you see the prospects, if you were to give me your wish list right now, which I think you just did some of it, what have you proposed to the government, and what do you think's actually going to happen?
First of all, for sure, we will need support of our partners around the world. But this means that Ukraine should be ready, not only to wait for this help or wait when Great Britain or United States or other country will propose Marshall Plan 2.0 for Ukraine. We should be ready. We should prepare a recovery and modernization plan, and we are working on it, in order to show the world that Ukraine could be a very good alternative to Russia as a territory for doing business, for making investments, for a lot of things. It's the first thing. Second thing is for sure that we should have absolutely another country after this war. And first of all, this means that we need to have another kind of politics and another kind of rule of laws in courts. We should have trusted courts in Ukraine. It's a core issue. It's a basic issue for any other economic reforms. Third, my point and wish list is for sure taxation reform. We show a lot of many times to our government and to our president this very simple idea that we have two ways. One way, socialistic way, means that we are trying to enlarge social standards by increasing the taxes, but in these conditions business will go out of Ukraine. will relocate to Europe, to other countries, and we will not have enough money to pay these high social standards for pensioners, for state employees, etc. Another way is to decrease taxes, to 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 make economy grow, to give business possibility to invest in their business, to enlarge their business, to scale their businesses. In this case, we'll have bigger economy, bigger turnovers of companies, and they with smaller taxes rates, they will pay more to state budget. This means that in this case, state will have more resources for increasing social standards. So we need approximately from 3 to 5 years to fix social standards and to work, first of all, on economic growth. And then we will have a chance to be as a Poland in social level.
So that's a huge wish list. And what do you see the likelihood?
Just 3 points. Why huge? Several, 3
Exactly.
points.
No, the 3 biggest things that I think any state struggles with. So economic reforms, it seems like a lot of that is something that, taxation system, probably you have an opportunity to get through. Where do you see the courts? Well, let's go into the courts next. Where do you see the court that struggled? It seemed like before the war that was not working. Now it seems like President Zelensky should have the political capital inside the country to do really whatever he wants. So do you think he can win the battle against the court that he was losing before the war?
Yeah, he will fight corruption in courts, I'm sure. President Zelensky cannot do everything he wants.
Yeah.
Be careful with this, because there are a lot of red lines for president, even for such trusted president now as a President Zelensky. These red lines is Ukrainian territory, our Europe orientation, our idea for independence, but also corruption is a red line. We will not let president to corrupt any systems. But as for court reforms, it's the most expected reform for Ukrainians, the most expected. Everybody in the country, maybe apart from judges and their families, but everybody are for, even oligarchs. Even oligarchs prefer to have, that oligarchs even in Russia and in Ukraine, they prefer to solve their issues in British courts, not in Russian or Ukrainians. This means that they also need the real courts inside of Ukraine. So President Zelensky will realize this reform. The big problem is that president by himself cannot do this. We have parliament republic, not presidential republic. Parliament should choose appropriate scheme. For now, the courts are very closed system, and even in Venice and in European Court on Human Rights, they are protecting such systems from reforms, unfortunately. In accordance with Ukrainian laws, Ukrainian constitutions, these courts are very themselves-oriented. You cannot, for example, fire a judge. You cannot do this. It can be done only by their council of judges. So we need to change this system step by step. not in one at once. But as for me, I think that that Montenegro made a very good idea. They go out of European court, fired their judges, hired another better guys, and then back to European court. It was very innovative solution. I hope we'll find the same one in Ukraine. Maybe another way, but also innovative one. We need new courts.
And actually, that's a must if Ukraine is going to have a chance of joining the European Union. Court reform and creating an independent judiciary that is not, corrupted is critical for Ukraine's EU accession. I would imagine that's going to be one of their main obstacles, right?
Yeah.
So that's let's go to the finally politically, and you spoke about this a little bit. The red lines. The president obviously can't do whatever he wants. There's certain things that Ukrainian people are going to demand after, or even during, but especially after the war, is Ukrainian and territorial integrity, Ukrainian alignment towards Europe, which really this war with Russia is that's what this is all about. Ukraine's alignment with Europe and the necessary democratic institutions that it requires for that is an existential threat to Putin's own regime, because he views that it is a threat to Russia to have such a close country, historically, politically, spiritually, to it, do things in a European way. And I guess the third one related to that is the anti-corruption, which you spoke about. What do you see post-war politics? And well, let's talk about during the war and post-war. The 11 political parties that were suspended, because it is martial law, that is the president's right under martial law to suspend political parties. But eventually martial law should end. And what political reforms do you see are necessary coming out of the war?
We still have enough paternalistic state. First of all, we need to enlarge the level of civil education by civilians. Means their understanding how to work modern economy, how they can have another type of earnings like their own pension fund, etc. We need to start with reform connected with paternalistic system, to destroy this paternalistic system. It's a very important first point. Second point, actually we have only two anti-Ukrainian parliament parties, which are in minority without any chances for the future. I don't think that we need to protect Ukraine from another points of view, but to work on school reforms, on reforms of higher education system, in order to let people understand what is the difference between old-fashioned, old-styled guys and political parties of past and parties of future. What's the difference? To understand, to make their own decision based on their own critical and reflexive and creative minds, and adaptive minds. So it's main reform, minds reform. The second political reform is that to make our parliament really parliament. In any case, we still have presidential republic, which is very good in such times of war, but it's not okay for democratic reforms. I think that that President Zelensky is a good solution for Ukraine for making reform, but it's not enough because we need more open government authorities. I mean, more exclusive, but better to say, but inclusive means to make civil institutions, civil society institutions, join in elaborating of state policies. It's a second reform, to be more open for civil institutions. Then third point, I think it's also very important. We need to redevelop our bureaucracy, our state institutions, to make them adaptive, more flat, not as hierarchy ones, to decrease number of institutions and managers in the government authorities and state, because we have huge mechanism in this sphere. So we need to have very service project-oriented and small government in Ukraine as a center of policy celebrating and control. Maybe it's enough. These 3 points will completely redevelop the Ukraine. Institutions adaptive and small and flexible.
Digital.
Second is
Also digital,
second is civil education, civilian citizens education, and third to make our republic the real parliamentary one.
Okay. And do you see progress on that front right now, or is that under discussion in the Rada, or is this something that has not been discussed or considered yet?
It is on our table, so we are discussing this even with the president and the political parties.
So it's pretty amazing what's going on right now in Ukraine. Under siege, Kyiv, you see pictures from parliament of them meeting. It seems that huge reforms are being considered, voted on, and may actually come into force within the first 30 days of an existential threat to the country's survival. Why is this all just happening now? And what do you think this says about Ukraine's government now versus before?
First of all, we have almost the same ministers and the governors now in Ukraine compared to 2021. Almost the same guys, government. So I think that we have good enough government for the current times. They are proactive. They are smart. They are collaborative, cooperative. Sorry for that word. So I think that it's very, very good that we have now not a kind of discussions or political wars inside of Ukraine or in the parliament, for example. Better say that we have cooperation.
And it just started 30 days ago, or was there cooperation before, or is it just
Yes,
because
this cooperation was before. I think that now we have a highest level of cooperation between the different institutions inside of country. For sure, we have some problems. For sure, some socialists still try to prove president and other authorities that it's better to use old-fashioned way for country development. But I think that president now understand that Ukraine needs not only to try to use international help in order to survive, but even now we need to think how to develop, how to modernize every sphere of Ukrainian life. The president understands this, prime minister understands this, and most of parliamentaries also understand. For sure, it's not good time for dreaming or for speaking or preparing this modernization, because we need to survive, because we need to be oriented on the war in order to help our army, who are real heroes in this situation. For sure, we will need a lot of money and a lot of help in order to rebuild our cities and infrastructure, to help civilians to survive in this very horrible days. But some of us have to think about future, have to prepare the plans and ideas and funds for the future, because when we win, we need to use that time. Unfortunately, and thank you, Samuel, because what you're doing is very important for us, to do not let to the collective West to forget about Ukraine. We know that sometimes it's so-called Ukraine fatigue. When some countries, we saw this even in international media. If 2 or 3 weeks ago there were a lot of news about Ukraine, now we see that interest to Ukraine, to this situation, is going down. And thanks to you, you're making this issue, this point clear for the West. It's very important for Ukraine. We will need support, and we need more and more support, because it's a final line. If we again will make a bad peace with Russia, we will have next war in Poland, in Baltic countries, in Azerbaijan, in the next wave of war in Syria, in Africa, etc., etc., in Balkans, for sure. So we need to stop, not only stop this aggression, but to democratize Russia, to demilitarize Russia, to completely develop mentality of Russians. It's an issue for the whole world safety, and for sure, I'm sure that NATO is not opening doors for Ukraine. We see this, but this means that the world will need a new architecture of safety, of defense. We will need more adaptive institutions for making world more safe for every citizen, for every country.
Yeah, and Andrii, this is really important. I think a point you brought up, and this is why we're doing this broadcast, the Borderlands Stories from Ukraine, is I hope that this war is mercifully short. We want to get back to Kyiv as soon as we can. Me and my fiance, and I know all the people I know who've left would love to go back. And actually, here in America, where I am now, maybe there's a little bit of fatigue on the news, but the people in America, I'm surprised, are intensely interested in what's going on in Ukraine, more so than ever before. And Ukraine's been in the news in America for a lot of interesting reasons over the last 20 years, between the two revolutions, the presidential election in 2016, and the impeachment, and then recently with the tensions and now the war with Russia. But I think people finally get it, that, and this is something that before I was visiting America, people said, "Oh, what are you doing in the Ukraine?" Which they like to say the Ukraine because they don't understand. They should just say Ukraine, because it's a country, not a territory. But secondly, before it was like a kind of an obscure, it was an oddity that I was here. Well, what are you doing there? And now, because people have seen Ukraine on the world stage fighting like heroes, really, that not just the army, but the people protesting the occupation, the heroism of citizen soldiers, the government, frankly, President Zelensky now he has hero status among the West, because people are saying, why can't our president or our leaders be that strong or decisive? And now I'm reading and seeing your commentary on what the Radas do in the parliament and the government. I think introducing or considering introducing and voting on reforms that most governments wouldn't do in a year. It's really inspiring, and I think that the whole world now is watching Ukraine, and that the entire perception of Ukraine is forever changed, no matter what happens here. And we believe that on this show, we've said from the very beginning, Ukraine will be victorious. It's just a question of how long and at what cost to the country and the world. But the brand value has gone way up, and that won't change. Yes, there'll be some ebbing and flowing in interest, but I think forever people view it as a special opportunity to rebuild Ukraine in a way that could be an example for the rest of the West that has a need for reform. Because after war, if you read the book by Ray Dalio on the rise and fall of nations, war is when history is written. It is when the future of countries are made or broken. And you see that right now. Ukraine and Russia both face existential threats to their own survival because of this war. And I do believe, like you said, either Ukraine is victorious and Russia suffers a catastrophic defeat and has to reform itself, or Ukraine loses and Russia gets what it wanted, which is influence, control, and other countries now become next. Poland obviously knows they're next, the Baltic countries, and that triggers a larger conflict. So the opportunity for Ukraine after the war is vast, and more importantly, the people around the world who want to help. In fact, a friend of mine I'm meeting in Dallas right after this. He's got 20 plus years of infrastructure, city planning experience. Just wants to talk to me about what's going to go on in the future. So there's a massive amount of things that we can do after the war, and that's why I'm really excited to have you on the board of the Borderlands Foundation, because we're definitely going to want to continue this post-war because of all the work that's ahead for Ukraine, and that's really exciting. So I'm really glad that you've agreed to do that, and I'm looking forward to finally meeting you in person in Kyiv, and until then, helping to promote the brighter future that is Ukraine during the war and after the war. And I'm really happy to hear how well reforms are going. I had no idea that all these things were being talked about, voted on, and considered. And I think this is really informative.
first of all, thank you very much for such very very nice and very great words. I hope that we will see each other soon. I hope that we will win in April over the Russia. It's now our hopes. And for sure, we will need a lot of architectures, innovators, engineers from around the world to build here in Ukraine completely new cities, completely new territories and infrastructure. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and Andrii, we are about hopefully a couple weeks away or less from introducing our technology that we want to get out there that helps identify individual needs. So if someone needs to flee to a different part of the country or out of the country, that will be there. If someone just needs money, financial support, they can post their case and ask for help from anyone around the world. And that's the application we're building. And it's something we want to turn into a post-war application. Also, anyone who needs to rebuild, post your case and let someone directly contribute or fund it. And that will be for you and I to discuss how to do that in an economically sound fashion from an investment / donation perspective. That's going to be really interesting. So I really look forward to working with you on that. And Andrii, you said something interesting, a couple things I'd like you to leave us with, because you are a futurologist, I guess you'd call it, or you're a thinker on politics, economics, and I assume you're watching the war closely. Why did you say hopefully in April? Do you believe Russia is that close to collapse from an economic perspective, or is this just your view of the battlefield, or just a hope?
Battlefield, Ukraine tactically won over Russia this week, because Russia do not have any chances to occupy Kharkiv or Kiev or Mykolaiv, big cities, big Ukrainian cities. So I think that our biggest win will be not on the battlefield, but maybe in diplomacy sphere, and maybe in changes inside of Russia. I mean deputinizations as an approach. But I think why I'm saying about April, just because I like April, but not just because I'm a futurologist, because futurologists think in terms of years and decades, not in terms of forecasts for nearest weeks. But in accordance with scenarios which we made in our analytical center, now we'll have very slow time period. Means war will be very low in its speed. We will see small attacks from Russian side. We will for sure see a lot of bombings. Now here I heard more than 10 explosions during our interview, our conversation. So Russia will continue bombing Ukrainian cities like in Aleppo. They do not have other chances to destroy Ukraine as a country, as an infrastructure, but they will not be successful in this sphere. They have not enough resources to rebuild their army, but enough rubles, very empty currency, but in fact their local currency. They can print as much rubles as they want, because their economy is now very close one. So they have up to 6 months for economy survive. This means that we need to continue our diplomatic work and work of our army. This can make regional elites, business elites, and maybe some security service elites are supporters in deputinization.
Yeah. So you say that Russia can last economically 6 months, meaning supporting the conflict and averting a full-blown economic collapse?
Yeah. West cannot realize the real embargo on Russia. A lot of international and global companies continue to work inside of Russia, so it's not okay with sanctions. Also, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, India, Pakistan, China continue to cooperate or collaborate with Russia. This means that Russia have another way to earn money, or to sell their gold, or to sell their coal, gas, etc., to other countries, and to continue survive as such strange economy.
Okay, so because of the current level of sanctions, they have 6 months, but if the sanctions get worse, meaning they cut off all oil and gas purchases from Europe, it could be a lot less than 6
banks, SWIFT on other banks, then total embargo on the technologies, on spare parts from around the world, increasing the list of oligarchs, deputies, government authorities in the sanction list. In this case, for sure, the second or third circle around the Putin will start joint projects how to cut Putin from the country. Means how to make the signals from Putin are not working as a management signals. If Putin will remain in his bunker, in his Kremlin, or wherever, to continue to be survive, and even to see the very nice picture like Russia is winning, but it will be a virtual picture, and the rest of Russia will start deputinization. It would be okay. I'm sure that the next presidents of Russia will be maybe from army, maybe from security service, or maybe even mayor of Moscow, Sobyanin. It doesn't matter. We need as a next step destroying the ex-Soviet system in Russia.
All right. Well, that's a fascinating prediction or possibilities that you're pointing out there. Well, Andrii, you're welcome to stay with me if you want. I'm going to go through the news, or you can not.
I have to go. Yeah. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, my friend, and I'll just stay and give the update that we normally do. Thank you, Andrii.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers. Okay, this is a roll-up of the news as we see it from the sources that I view constantly on Twitter. This is from Anders Asland, and he says Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin are reportedly sending execution squads after their own army with orders to kill any Russians who try to flee. There have also been reports of Chechen units being sent in to try and stop Russian deserters. This is from the Mirror, British newspaper. And this really speaks to the level of morale and lack of motivation within the Russian army, that fear does work in stemming some of these potential collapses in units, but it only can work so well compared to the opposite, which is motivation based on trust, faith in a cause, and commitment to each other, which the Ukrainian side has in abundance. So this is a very interesting data point or article on this growing trend that you hear of bad morale inside the Russian army and how they're trying to stop it. And this is a headline from a local newspaper pointed out by Igor Shushko, and the local newspaper in Moscow says, nothing is happening. Walk on by. A local special operation is underway. No one is growing poor. The economy is growing. This was a headline on a Russian newspaper, which obviously has a bit of satire or sarcasm in that headline. The National Security, according to Ina Sovsun, the National Security Council of Ukraine has announced that Russian soldiers have been issued an antidote to chemical weapons. It's possible to assume that Russia will probably use chemical weapons against Ukraine in the next few days. So this is something really to watch. There's been rumors of a possible chemical weapon strike in northeast Ukraine around Sumy, where Russia is preparing the ground for that by saying that there's a biological chemical weapons laboratory there, which is not true, but they're going to probably strike an industrial plant there and try to create the impression when it does happen that it was done by Ukrainians on their own people versus by Russians. And this is an appeal to a Russian officer, commander of one of the units of the Legion of Freedom of Russia, to the military personnel of the Russian armed forces. So this is a video of that appeal. So Russian forces there are Russian soldiers within Ukraine fighting back against Russia, which is interesting. And this is a very interesting video, which just I think is typical of both the citizen soldier of Ukraine, but also just the crazy scenes that you're seeing on the battlefield there. It's a blown up Russian equipment, fire, and Ukrainian troops after a fierce battle. And in walks a Ukrainian girl with a Kalashnikov, no helmet, no bulletproof vest, sunglasses, who is fighting with the battalion. This is a very interesting video on Twitter. And I saw a caption from that video, which basically said Ukrainian Fashion Week 2022, which was quite funny. All right. This is another piece of news that came out of Ukraine. Russian occupiers in Melitopol, according to Katerina Sagatskova, Russian occupiers in Melitopol asked journalist Svetlana Zalizetska to stop working at her news website, RIA Melitopol. She refused. Then they took her 75-year-old father hostage. Joseph Zelensky spent 4 days in Russian captivity. And here's a video of thousands of locals protesting in Slavutich, where Russian soldiers entered. Occupiers captured the mayor, but were forced to release him. Then Russians used stun grenades against the crowd. Unarmed people are screaming, "Go fuck yourselves! Occupiers, go home!" Slavutich is Ukrainian, and this is just another example in this video of Ukrainians in protests just refusing to back down, regardless of the physical danger and threats that they're going through. It's another picture from Nika Melkozerova of heroic Ukrainian women going to war. Just a comment from Yuri. He said it's more correct to call Chechens Kadyrovians. That's named after the leader of Chechen Republic in Russia, He said a lot of true Chechens are fighting for freedom of Ukraine, which is correct. There are a lot of Chechen fighters on the Ukrainian side because of what Russia did in Chechnya to gain control. According to Anton Chetkostov, Ukrainian monitors report that antidotes against nerve agents are being distributed among Russian soldiers. If true, this may suggest the invaders are preparing for use of chemical weapons. And two Russian landing ships, possibly the ones which survived the attack in Berdyansk yesterday, are seen headed back to Navy base Sevastopol in Crimea, believed now in Sevastopol. So there was a large Alligator-class Russian landing ship that was destroyed in Berdyansk with, I think, a bunch of soldiers or sailors and equipment that was reinforcing Russian soldiers in southern Ukraine, which was struck, and then two landing ships which were damaged, were seen going back to Crimea. And Lesia Vasilenko said Russia soldiers have kidnapped two boys in Kharkiv and demand their father pays them in weapons. He allegedly was collecting off of killed soldiers. The father only found one AK gun and was ready to pay it as ransom, but Russians will return only one son for one gun. This is a report from Ukrainian parliament member Lesia, and she was sending this out towards UNICEF and the International Committee for the Red Cross. This is pictures from Poland, a line of young Polish men on their way to enlist in the Territorial Defense Forces. The Polish army is growing quickly. Poland has been extremely supportive of Ukraine, and seems like their government is not at all backing down from Russian threats. This is from Oleksiy Sorokin. He's a writer for Kyiv Independent, I think a writer or editor. What's with the Russian obsession with Kherson Airport in Chornobayevka? Ukraine strikes a Russian-controlled airport for the 10th time now, killing Russian Lieutenant General Yakov Ryazanstev. I think it's the 7th general dead, according to Ukraine. And this is a general that was quoted as telling his troops on the 4th day of the war that the war would be over in any hour now, which has not happened. And this is in Melitopol. This is discussing the father of Svetlana Zalidetska again. Her father was most likely taken hostage by FSB, Russian FSB. And this is just a trend. According to Mattia Nellis, for now, 3 weeks, Russians are targeting local officials, elected councilors, journalists, activists, priests, businessmen, or random civilians, some targeted, some randomly picked up, and even relatives of journalists. This is that photo from that video, which was labeled Kiev Fashion Week 2022. That girl walking through this wreckage from a fight with no body armor and no helmet, just an AK, sunglasses, and pretty stylish combat outfit, as you'd expect. Secretary Anthony Blinken, the U.S. will provide an additional $100 million in civilian security assistance, including armored vehicles and equipment to the Ukrainian state border guards and national police, who are on the front lines rescuing victims and protecting civilians from Putin's brutal assault. So more American security assistance is on the way to the border guards and the police inside Ukraine. And big news out of yesterday's speech in Warsaw, President Biden said Putin cannot remain in power. He declared it Saturday at the end of his speech that Russian President Vladimir Putin should no longer remain in power, an unabashed challenge that came at the very end of a swing through his European trip meant to reinforce Western unity. At the end of the speech, the White House made it clear that this was not an official U.S. government policy to call for President Putin stepping down or being taken out of office as a war aim for the U.S., but as an unstated policy but belief or feeling of the president, it certainly had an impact globally in terms of how people view his thinking on the conflict, on the war. And here's a list of countries providing military aid to Ukraine and which ones have been most helpful. Turkey is high on the list, as well as the U.S. here and UK, Finland, and also you can see Germany actually hasn't provided a lot in terms of quantity, but a lot of different types of weapons. This is a picture of Mariupol from the sky. This is drone footage that is available of what the devastation of Mariupol looks like. You can see it's complete in terms of the number of untouched buildings is almost non-existent. You can see from this footage or this photo. All right, sorry, just moving that on. So this is in Kharkiv. There was supposed to be a music festival, and they decided to hold it in the subways of Kharkiv, regardless of the war. And this is video, according to Igor Shushko, he forwarded, which shows how Russian forces have resorted to murdering Ukrainian civilians since they keep losing battles with the Ukrainian military. This is a video from Vice News published yesterday, and this is footage from inside Irpin as civilians flee Russian attack. Vice News does very good combat journalism and reporting, and I would recommend checking out this documentary.
So right now we're seeing hundreds of families streaming out from Irpin, just a little up the road here. Over the past 12 days, this is a town that's been consistently bombed. So right now we're driving into Irpin to go pick up more people. We've been hearing artillery and some grad rockets, so it's pretty jumpy in there.
These civilians have been at the forefront of one of the most important battles in Ukraine. Just minutes away from the Kyiv city center, Irpin is a crucial territory. If Russia takes control here, Kyiv is next.
Мы до последнего сидели. Що этот Ірпінь так страдає?
Це наші працюють, це наші збройні сили. Там є в кожному автобусі є медичний працівник. Якщо треба якусь медичну допомогу, будь ласка, вам будуть надавати.
this is the Irpin Bridge. As you can see, it's totally blown out. Hundreds of people are coming across these rickety bridges made from just the leftover wood and metal scraps from around this area where this bridge was destroyed. This is kind of the final cross between Kyiv city center and the suburbs where the majority of the fighting against Russians is happening. These people have been stuck inside. Everybody here is desperate to get out. It's families, it's older people, it's disabled people. Anybody who can get out is trying to get out. People are bringing their pets. It's a really desperate scene.
Засели там россияне в наших кварталах, уже начинают заходить в дома. Но говорят, что выпустят, но некоторые побывают.
Снаряды летают над крышами, дети в ужасе.
Мы 5 дней сидели в подвале у соседей, потому что у самих подвала нет. Вот мы взяли белую тряпку, белую штору на палку.
На свой страх и риск в отчаянии, потому что находиться там под обстрелами невозможно. Дети с ума сойдут.
Лежат трупы просто на дорогах.
All of these cars are abandoned. A lot of them have been bombed, a lot of them have been popped up and shot. Right now, it's safe, people can cross, but just up the road here is where they're saying the Russian checkpoints start. What are the dangers right now for the civilians coming across?
From there.
All this area.
All these areas are controlled
From the left.
Are controlled particularly by Russians, and Russian artillery is sitting not far from here, so this is already dangerous.
We're seeing a lot of destruction on the
The
road
battle
here.
before, the battle that was before, a few days ago, there was battle between Ukrainian forces and Russian forces in this area. This was the defending position, and the Russian forces attacked. You can see the results of the mortar fire and artillery fire all over the civilian area there.
So, we're walking inside the city of Irpin. We can hear bombs, artillery going off just in the distance.
After weeks of attacks, a lull in the fight allows us a safe window to see just how bad the fighting has been. But it's not without its risks. A local emergency worker offers us a ride.
Okay.
Так, бак перемоги, хорошо, поїхали. Пристібніться тільки. Злітаємо.
So this guy is just a local volunteer who's helping move people around here and evacuate the city. All around the city here, there's still Russian forces that he's saying are kind of wandering around, so we have to be quick.
Там до Відчука, куди? Ходить.
Da. So straight here. Yeah.
Там можуть бути окупанти. Добрий день, до Відчука, де вона, ця вулиця?
Ось, зараз підніметесь нагору, наліво по головній дорозі.
Наліво направо і там до Відчука, так?
Да, там вивіска.
Чисто там?
Солдати є.
Наші, так?
Ні.
Не наші? Короче, давайте, блядь, з Богом.
The emergency worker speeds off to go help other evacuees.
It is a ghost town. You can see there's destruction all around from, different artillery strikes in the city. On the outskirts, you can hear the artillery back and forth between the Russians and the Ukrainians on each side. So this is the basement of the hospital here. This also doubles as a bunker for the people here in the village.
The attack on Irpin was sudden and violent, but for some here, it's all too familiar.
У 2014 році ми були у Луганську, таке пережили. У Луганську було легше. Літаки бомблять. Касетні бомби. І дуже багато чого.
Are you okay? Is your family okay here?
Дочка і син, дочка виїхала з внучкою в Польщу. І син виїхав теж з сім'єю за кордон. А ми тут, жінка. Ну, цю фашистську Росію переможе.
This is the central park of European. It looks like there was attacks on a bunch of the civilians here. You can see the bodies still lying out. Looks like these cars were pulling around here and a lot of them crashed. You can see they were being shot at. And then there's about 3 bodies still here, kind of left behind. One of them looks like he was shot in the head. Some of these other ones look like they've been pulled out of the cars.
Oh, Peter.
As the Russian army continues to shell Irpin, striking homes, schools, and local government buildings, the number of killed or injured is still unknown. These civilians who were lucky enough to get out are now headed to Kyiv.
Ми від'їжджаємо! Машину! Двері! Двері! Машину! Машину! Ми поїхали!
But while the people here may have gotten away from the front lines of Irpin, the war isn't far behind them.
Each day, the shelling is creeping closer and closer into the city. It's just hit this apartment building here in the western part of Kyiv.
Скільки ми ще будемо гинути, оце ви мені скажіть. Скільки ми будемо ховатися по погрібам і підвалам. Ну скільки можна оце терпіти? Щоб їх в ворони розклювали, тварі такі.
Все, уже нету сил, уже кризис. Какой следующий будет дом?
This is yet another strike on an apartment complex, on a civilian area. They just keep coming.
Как так можно издеваться? До сколько это будет продолжаться? Вот мы не жили, просто радовали жизни.
So this was the living room. And you can see just like the pock marks in the door here. Look at these holes, just everything that ripped through. There's nothing but destroyed glass anywhere we go here. There's nothing left here. And look at this, like every little piece of glass shattered into the walls here. This would have killed hundreds and hundreds of people if people hadn't already been hiding in shelters for the past weeks. This is just the progression of the war. People are just so ready for this now. People are so expecting of these strikes and these attacks that nobody's even home anymore.
We caught up with the Voznesensky family, who we met at the bridge in Irpin. They're packed into their oldest son's Kyiv apartment as they try to figure out what's next.
When did you make the decision to leave and to come to Kyiv?
Это невозможно просто. Вот видите, как ребенок трусится целый день.
Дети наши выучили слово «война». Вот, и когда мы шли вдоль Ирпеня, вдоль сожженных домов многоэтажных.
Вдоль тех домов, мимо которых мы ходили последнее время, мы прекрасно знаем же, свой родной город, в котором мы живем. Взорванные машины, валяется труп, мешком голова накрыта. И ты ребенка ведешь, вот так закрывая глаза.
Они, конечно, смотрели по сторонам, говорят: мама, смотри, машина сгорела. А то, что возле машины лежат растерзанные люди, ну, мы их старались как-то уже не показывать. И они шли в ужасе, озираясь.
Are you worried that Kyiv could soon face the same fate as Irpin, as what you've already seen?
Так к этому идет. Мы наблюдаем это вот последние 2 дня, находясь здесь.
Мы выбираем, как бы, пытаемся выбрать какое-то относительно безопасное направление, но на сегодняшний день получается, что ракетами обстреливаются все города Украины. И как дальше быть, мы не понимаем.
Тут точно так же, как в Ирпене 6 дней назад.
Okay, so that film from Vice News, I definitely recommend you check it out. Their reporting on this war has been really good and shows the human impact. So that concludes this episode of Borderlands Stories from Ukraine. Really hope you enjoyed this discussion on the future of Ukraine politically, economically, with Andrii Dligach, who's joining the foundation's board. And Ukraine has a bright future ahead of it. And I look forward to seeing that develop. Even during the war, you can see the government is doing a lot compared to, I think, at any time in its history in terms of getting ready for that future. And it just shows that war is spurring long overdue, long needed reforms and innovation inside Ukraine, which I think will help propel it and its people towards enduring what they need to endure to emerge successful and victorious through the war. So as always, if you enjoyed this, please watch for what we're developing soon, which is the app to allow people to donate directly to people in Ukraine in need, or to see their needs and help connect with them on whatever help you want to provide. And look forward to releasing that soon. If you want to donate to the Borderlands Foundation to help us develop that app and help us provide that real-time support that we do with Ukrainian refugees that we employ, to anyone who's trying to escape the conflict inside Ukraine or leave the country, please do donate to the Borderlands Foundation. Thank you again for joining.